friends! Welcome to the Kingdom of Pinfall, your favorite pointless wrestling podcast. You've made it to the 4th episode, otherwise known as Chapter 4. If you are new here, you should probably start at Chapter 1. This is one of those things that goes in order, and I'm not going to recap anything, at least not in a meaningful way. I don't have anything to say this week in the way of an introduction, except to please hit up my link tree in the description, because I make art and stuff. I usually say that at the end, but guess what? I can see that a lot of people stop listening after the chapter's over, so I'm saying it at the beginning now. I do wrestling stuff, which should be relevant to your interests if you're listening to me tell this silly story each week. This chapter contains some more fantasy and magical violence, as well as me doing horrible accents that are probably more offensive and traumatizing than the violence. It also contains overly dramatic sound effects and music. Now, let's go to Pinfall. Chapter 4. The Gang Gets Zigglered. Big E dismounts his unicorn and roars with rage, even though Brock is already long gone to whatever part of the world the portal took him to. Smoke rises into the air from the charred ground left behind by Mandy's failed spells. She leaps off of Otis's back and runs to Kofi while peering into her satchel. As soon as she's off, Otis transforms into a tree-type creature with a very wide diameter. His arms are branches and his feet are twining roots. Kofi is still lying face down and hasn't moved since he landed in that position. His arms are splayed awkwardly. Blood is pooled under him and soaks his pink and blue spandex. Mandy is pulling out bandages and Xavier stumbles from his unicorn looking pale. He begins trying to play something on Francesca. The tune seems inappropriately upbeat for the seriousness of the moment. But after a few notes, a golden glow begins to emanate around his fallen comrade. Mandy stands above Kofi, holding a roll of bandages, realizing bandages won't fix this as everyone else gathers around. Otis shuffles forward on his tree feet and shoulders his way between Sonia and Nikki, scraping them with his bark. "Oh boy," he says quickly, and referring to the broken chunk of lance. "You gotta pull that out. Somebody's gotta get it out." No one moves, and he then says loudly, "Tucky, get it!" Tucker kneels next to Kofi and grasps the splintering, blood-covered shard. "Ew!" Alexa groans and looks away. Green, sparkling tendrils are coming from Otis's branching fingers and also snaking up from the ground around Kofi, as well as from the burnt patches of earth nearby. He says urgently, "Get it out, Tucky!" Tucker yanks, and it makes a squelching, tearing sound. It doesn't come all the way out on his first attempt. He accidentally lifts up Kofi's limp body instead of removing the object. He winces and puts one hand on Kofi's back for leverage as he pulls with the other. There is another moist squelch, a crunch, and then another squelch. It leaves a gaping, open wound that seems to be peering up at him. It only remains gaping for a moment before it becomes filled by the golden glow from Francesca's magic. "Oh yeah!" Otis cries out victoriously as his magic tangles with Xavier's, creating an even brighter glow and a heavenly hum. The grass grows again from the burned spots, erasing all evidence of the destructive fire, and Otis's hands glow brighter and brighter. He wiggles his fingers, and the tendrils encircle him as well as Kofi. Tucker throws the piece of lance aside and tries to wipe his hands on his vest. As he tries to get the blood off of his palms, he watches in awe as Otis does something he's never done before. They all watch and wait, entranced. The wound is closed, but a large scar is left, and his gear is irreparably damaged. Kofi groans and rolls himself over. He blinks several times and gazes up at the sky. He's covered in dirt and blood, but doesn't seem to realize it nor care. "Uh-oh!" yells Otis, and he starts to teeter as the magic fades, having done its job. As he begins to fall, he starts spinning his arms. He turns back into human Otis, and his ass thumps onto the ground. He chuckles as both Tucker and Mandy move toward him. Mandy is still gripping desperately onto the bandages, and Tucker pulls several slices of ham from his pack and hands them to his friend, who snatches and eats them ravenously. Kofi gasps for breath and says nothing. He just keeps blinking and lying otherwise very still. Big E and Xavier laugh triumphantly, and then run at each other and chest bump. Big E's chest bumps Woods completely off of his feet. Everyone's relieved and there are some gleeful sighs. Some more laughs. Tucker is patting Otis on the back and congratulating him for the high-level spell he somehow cast in the moment of need. Their celebrations are cut very short. The ham falls from Otis's fingers and his jaw drops. Alexa screams such a high-pitched, banshee-like scream that everyone covers their ears as she flies high above them again to see who is coming to fuck with them this time. You can't be serious! Sonya rolls her eyes and twirls her blades. What's going on? Who is calling these shots? The Titan of Pinfall, Xavier says solemnly. He who shall not be named. Everyone poises for a fight again except Kofi and Otis, though Otis is trying to get up. He's visibly exhausted, having passed his own life force into Kofi. He's extremely sweaty and begins to take off his shirt to make himself more comfortable. "They're coming for your belts!" Nikki yells and points as the two leisurely approaching men reach the peak of a nearby hill. Robert Roode is in something that looks very much like a bathrobe and carrying an axe, while Dolph Ziggler is shirtless with a flail and his hair is flowing in a wind that's only affecting him. Neither looks particularly intimidating. A new ghostly referee materializes on the field. "Whoa, this looks like a party," Dolph says, waving his free hand and smiling. "Hey, everyone!" He greets them and then looks at Mandy specifically. "Hi, Mandy!" "Hi, Dolph." She returns the gesture with uncertainty. The two men are keeping their distance and not approaching the group, but they're making no effort to attack either. Roode keeps posing and flexing with his axe. Dolph comes a little closer, dragging the flail behind him carelessly. He says, "So here is the deal. I don't have a problem with any of you guys, but we've been sent by the king, and who are we to argue with the king, you know?" He shrugs. "If you could just hand us those SmackDown tag team belts of power, we'll be on our way." "What king?" asks Xavier. "The king of the ring, King Corbin," he tells him. "You're a long way from the ring," Sonya comments. He shrugs again. "Yeah, but you see, apparently there's some sort of WrestleMania about to happen. And well, the king wants his court to have the belts of power so we can fight the bad guys." Alexa flies around them and points out, "You all are kind of the bad guys right now." "Worst guys. We're going to fight the worst guys," he clarifies. "And if we beat the worst guys, then we'll be the good guys, right?" "No, sir." Big E drags out the words for several long seconds, and everyone agrees with him, shaking their heads. I mean, Dolph gives them another shrug and smiles innocently. "We're practically on the same side in this." "So why don't you leave their belts alone then, yeah?" Nikki asks, clenching her fists, her rage building. Dolph looks at her and his brow furrows. "I can't understand her. Does anyone know what she just said?" "She said you can kiss our asses, Ziggler," Alexa says angrily. "That's not what I said," Nikki tries to tell her, and Alexa then shoots her a glare as well. Big E and Woods quickly get back on their unicorns, preparing to defend their belts. "Wait, let me talk to Dolph," Mandy says suddenly and begins walking slowly towards the men before anyone can stop her. Otis reaches out to grab her, but his fist catches only air. He opens his mouth to say something, but all that comes out is Ziggler smiles and twirls the flail casually as she approaches. Then he extends his arms for a hug. She stops, seems to study him for a moment. Everyone watches, holding their breath. She does not hug him. "No hug?" he questions. He shrugs once more. "Okay." His smile fades into a frown and he skillfully swings the flail out and low. The spiked ball on the end doesn't hit Mandy, but instead carries the chain around her ankles. Once wrapped, he jerks back. It locks in place and she falls. He nods to Rude and says, "Now." Before Mandy has hit the ground, Otis regains his will. He lets out a terrifying roar, and Otis the bear rips across the grass, kicking up dirt and salivating with rage. Xavier and E follow suit and pass him, galloping swiftly. E heads for Rude, pulling back his hammer for a mighty swing. Xavier moves for Ziggler, blowing loudly into Francesca. "You son of a bitch!" Sonya yells, and she too breaks out in a run. After a few seconds, she vanishes from view, blending in with the landscape. "Crap, crap, crap!" Alexa flies quickly to catch up with the unicorns and begins trying to surround the two men with protective auras to avoid another Kofi incident. This time they're on mounts against men on foot though, so her hopes are a bit higher. Her hopes are quickly dashed. E swerves to the left of Rude and swings his hammer out as he passes. Rude quickly ducks and then sweeps back with his axe, cutting deep into the ankle of the unicorn. The creature lets out a blood-curdling scream as it collapses, and E tumbles from its back onto the ground. Dolph suddenly has a knife to Mandy's throat with one hand, using her as a human shield. He spins the flail and the chain tangles around one of the front legs of Xavier's unicorn, pulling it to the ground and sending Xavier careening off as well. Otis comes to a stop out of reach of the flail, and seeing Mandy in danger, he stands on his hind legs and roars, trying to taunt her captor. Dolph ignores him and starts backing up toward his partner, so they're standing back to back and no one can take either from behind. Both E and Woods are trying to get to their feet, and Tucker is pounding on his shield with his sword, trying to draw attention his way, but to no avail. Alexa tries to help the two downed fighters to their feet. They're not too worse for wear after being sent over the fronts of their mounts and onto the ground. Nikki reaches their attackers and stands just out of reach of the flail near Otis. Kofi remains lying where he was. "We're outnumbered," Dolph states, noticing that they're surrounded. He doesn't seem concerned, though. He's not concerned at all, and this concerns everyone in the party. "One's missing," Rude tells him right as Sonya reappears next to them, descending upon them with daggers drawn, going for both of their necks at once. She misses them as Rude promptly surrounds them in a glowing blue shield that appears to be made of ice. She collides instead with the aura, and as her blades connect with it, it makes a sound like metal on metal. She hits so hard and unexpectedly that it knocks her off of her feet and sends tremors up both of her arms. The injured unicorns are screaming, Otis the bear is roaring, and Nikki is letting out a string of what might be profanity. Only Alexa understands her and responds to her. "Hold on, give me 2 seconds. My spells aren't instant, I have to channel the damn things." E finally gets up. He shakes his head and groans, using his hammer like a cane to steady himself. He looks at his unicorn lying helplessly on the ground, white fur splattered with red. He looks at Rude, points his hammer towards him and says, "You asshole!" Xavier leans forward to catch his breath, and then begins playing a wild tune on Francesca and seems to give Big E even more strength. The strange chanting voices begin again. This time they're saying, "New Day Rocks, New Day Rocks." Woods plays along with the chant. Holding the hammer like a baseball bat, E begins sprinting towards Rude and Ziggler. Alexa groans and flies toward them as well. As she gets closer, the blue glow around them starts to jiggle and fade, which seems to perplex Rude momentarily, but then he looks up at her with eyes narrowed. Ziggler is still using Mandy to protect himself from Otis and Nikki, but Sonya is moving back toward him, watching his every move. He's smiling confidently, knife to Mandy's throat, as she holds as still as possible. As soon as the blue glow has faded completely, Nikki barrels toward Rude instead of Ziggler, hoping to catch him off guard. He swings the axe, and she catches the blade between her hands like she's trapping a fly. Fluidly, she reaches forward and grabs the shaft, trying to wrest it from his grip. Big E is coming up behind him. Otis and Sonya close in on Ziggler cautiously. Rude lets out a laugh as his weapon begins to turn to ice and freeze Nikki's hands rapidly and painfully. She yells in agony and releases her grip, freezing needles stabbing into her palms. He pulls the axe away and then kicks her in the midsection, sending her into Tucker's shield, knocking them both several feet away, tumbling on top of one another. In the next second, he swings back to block E's hammer attack. They lock weapons. The sharp ice spreads to the hammer and then to E's hands as it did Nikki's. He cries out in pain but doesn't let go, even as his hands begin to bleed and crack. Ziggler swings the flail around, driving it low into the back of E's knee, taking him down a notch and ripping open his calf. Blood splatters onto Rude's sequined bathrobe. Still playing the three-note rhythm along with the chants from the thousands of invisible people is Xavier. No one can get to Ziggler without mowing through Mandy. With E down on one knee, Rude uses his axe to knock the hammer from his hands. It spins end over end and lands near Tucker and Nikki. He then blasts them both with ice bolts from his fingers as he holds the axe over E. E ignores the pain in the back of his leg and stands, driving his shoulder toward Rude's thighs to knock him off balance. When he hits, he does knock Rude back into Ziggler, but he gets the butt of the axe to the side of his head with unexpected force from the man wearing a bathrobe with some sequins on it. Rude and Ziggler both laugh as Rude reaches down and takes the belt right off of Biggie's waist. Then huge ice spikes shoot up beneath him, sending him flying like a rag doll away from the fray. The trombone music comes to a stop, and so do the voices. Silence. E is prone. Tucker and Nikki are frozen to the ground and trying to break free. Ziggler begins laughing hysterically, with no one able to get to them. He looks toward Xavier and can barely get the words out between his riotous chuckles. "Just give me your belt, pal." No one moves an inch, not even the ones who aren't knocked out or frozen. It's a standoff. Ziggler then looks at the referee and asks, "Can you get the rest of these people to back up a little? This really isn't fair, and this is supposed to be between me and Woods over there. I'm feeling so crowded." The referee nods and begins floating around him in a circle. He motions Otis back. His big bare feet shuffle, and he snorts, then growls, digging his claws into the ground. The referee then shoos Sonya back and looks up at Alexa. He waves a finger at her as a warning. Then the astral being darts between Ziggler and Woods. Rude stands behind him, holding the belt in one hand and his axe in the other. "Just give it to me. We won." Ziggler gives him a shrug, and then he pokes the tip of the knife into the skin under Mandy's jaw. A bead of blood drips down her neck, and Xavier rips off his belt. He throws it toward the referee with a sneer. Everyone watches, not speaking, not moving. "Let her go!" Sonya screams at Dolph as the referee brings him the belt. Ziggler grins widely once his fingers grasp his prize. He can't hold it up triumphantly or put it on any sort of display because he refuses to let go of Mandy. A portal similar to the one Brock opened appears. It isn't a void of blackness, but on the other side there are buildings, a street. Rude takes a step into it, striking a pose as he does so. Ziggler backs up toward it as well and takes Mandy with him as it closes. Otis lets out a mournful roar of despair. There's suddenly a flash of movement and R-Truth appears. He asks, "What's all this noise? It's such a nice day and y'all disturbing everything now." Tune in next week for Chapter 5, Some Audiences with Some Queens. And, let's see if I killed some unicorns. And, wow, I am really laying waste to the heroes, aren't I? Also, please note that I said queens, plural, hint hint. Thank you for listening. I hope you come back again. Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you.